Hey everyone, this is Adam, the head of accounts from Pronto, and today I've got Jenna Chouinard with me, and we're going to be talking about how to calculate your MSP marketing budget and align it with your growth goals. At the end, we'll have a few special offers, so stay tuned. Now we're going to go through the outline, but we'll be discussing what will be covered in today's webinar. So going from ground zero, which is your starting budget, finding your best benchmark, setting a sensible goal and aligning it with your budget, picking value-driven goals for your business, sowing the seeds and reaping the rewards, calculating ROI, putting profit in perspective, stick, twist or fold, which is learning when to reinvest, pivot or exit a certain channel, doubling down, how and when to go all in, and getting back to basics. So don't forget the things that made you a profitable or successful MSP at the start. So going from zero to a substantial marketing budget might seem like a large step for a number of MSPs. We do have another webinar on Google My Business and why it's the best free DIY marketing any MSP can get. So I'd recommend checking out that webinar if you'd rather start small in terms of your marketing activities, both in spend and also get a good handle on your local SEO. Why planning a budget is the first step. It's really a lot about mindset and consciously putting money aside that you're going to invest in your business, just the way you may put money aside from your personal revenue take out of the business or previous employment you may have had to invest in stocks or in real estate. You're investing in your future, much the same way you're building that business to safeguard your future. You want to invest in the marketing activities that can allow that business to flourish and grow, and potentially maybe be able to sell it one day. So setting a percentage aside of income is a simple way to play around with what you can afford. And there's different metrics, which we'll discuss in a minute, around how you can get to that magic number. But one way to get yourself ready for putting any money down in terms of marketing activities is to think about past business activities you've done that you may have not actually attributed a cost to in the past. And then think about in the future, if you were to spend money on that thing again, would you spend the money on it? Did it deliver ROI? From a business standpoint, a customer acquisition standpoint, or would you be more strategic in the future? And that's how you can start to take an approach to marketing, knowing that there'll be some things you do from a marketing perspective that may not always go to plan, but then there'll be other things that do bring in repeat business and repeat customers that ultimately, are the lifeblood of your business. So the three metrics that I was talking about are the percentage of revenue. And so low would be a low marketing budget set of around 4 to 5% of revenue, of your monthly revenue or annual revenue. An average would be 9 to 10%, and high you'd consider, say, 14 to 15%, although there are businesses that have, up to 20, 25% of their marketing spend or even higher, depending on what stage of growth they're in, what their goals are, if they've got VC backing or other entities involved in the growth of that business. I think for most MSPs that aren't getting backed by VCs or aren't trying to acquire all the MSPs in the neighborhood, I think a sort of safe 9 to 10% budget is a good way to go. And if you can use our free marketing budget calculator, which we included in the PDF, and you can start to play around with some numbers to get an idea of what would be good for you to spend. But just to give you an idea, if you're a 1.5 million MSP and you were spending around 9 to 10% of your budget on marketing, you would have around $11,000 to spend in marketing total. That could be through people you're employing, vendors, initiatives, but then also 50% of that would be contributed towards actual activities, and then another, say, 50% further down of that, so around 2,500 of the 11,000 would be for paid advertising campaigns. So that could be LinkedIn or AdWords, typically for MSPs. Would you say those kind of three levels are typical, Jenna, for what you would consider to be safe in the MSP industry, or ones that you come across?
Yeah, absolutely. That's spot on, Adam. I agree that all these points are actually really good ones to consider. And what a lot of MSPs and B2B companies are finding these days is that outsourcing to a fractional marketing executive is really cost effective, and it'll help you stay in line with these numbers. So like when your budget and your goals are aligned, you're going to get the most out of your marketing partnerships. And there's going to be less time spent onboarding, less back and forth to make sure your vision really comes to fruition. So essentially, if you bring that clear vision to your outsourced marketing partner and a good sense of your budget and goals, you'll be able to focus kind of less on the logistics and more on the results. So this is great. Spot on.
Excellent. Yeah, so I think an FCMO is something that is probably underutilized in the MSP industry, where they think their first, hire might have to be like a head of sales or a head of marketing, and an FCMO might be able to help them bring in a specialist or vendors that can help kind of get all those initiatives moving, so that they get the growth where they then can make that next hire, whether that is an internal person. Yeah, so making sure your goals and budget are aligned. I think this also comes down to a few different factors, depending on how big your business is as an MSP, what types of products you're selling, the type of typical customer MRR, and also the people you've got within your organization. So do you have a sales department or multiple sales execs? Do you have a marketing department? How are those people working together? Are their goals aligned? Are the company's goals aligned? And making those other departments uniform in that vision. So I think setting goals that are realistic and based on previous results or kind of industry research is key. So for example, on AdWords, you could expect a cost per lead to be somewhere between 200, depending on what kind of market you're in, all the way up to 800, depending on the competition at the time and the performance of your ad groups and other things. But then that customer could turn into quite, a large customer in terms of lifetime value over a period of time. So you can go to AdWords, figure out how much it would cost on a cost per click, and use that data to work backwards and understand what a rough customer acquisition cost could be. So making sure you're using data points to build forecasts and build budgets is really the way you should be going about your marketing. And then once you've built your budgets and forecasts and your planning, whether you're using an FCMO or you're doing DIY, you've got to make sure you're tracking and measuring things correctly. So that means ongoing reports and analysis, both in the short and medium-term timeframes, and then even looking in the long-term timeframe of the types of customers you may have acquired, which channels did they come from, what are the types of MRR they bringing in, what was the sales cycles like, and then kind of working back to find your ideal customer and seeing which of those channels is worth investing more money in. And that ties very much into attribution. So if you have growth goals to get X number of customers total, maybe you should then pick out how many customers should be delivered by certain channels. And then you can see if you're actually firing on all cylinders with your marketing, or if there's certain channels that need more attention in due course, or should actually be, moved out the way for the channels that are delivering more success. In terms of accountability, making sure that whatever marketing initiatives you've got, people are being held accountable and that they're providing the reports and they're giving accurate and measurable data that you can then make decisions on and move forward. Setting time horizons as well, so short, medium and long-term KPIs are important for kind of how you're going to grow the business. It'd be unrealistic to kind of predict as an MSP that you're going to acquire 10 customers right off the bat off launching an AdWords campaign, but to get 10 customers at the end of the year could be fairly realistic based on the budget that you might have set. But then setting a short and medium term goal of getting one new customer in the next quarter via one of these channels would be more reasonable. So making sure things can be attainable, both for the morale of the people involved in the revenue and acquisitions, as well as obviously the growth of the business, making sure things are realistic. When you're kind of working with other businesses or MSPs, Jenna, do you find that with marketing there tends to be sometimes a little bit of an impatience from the CEOs that you work with, where they expect like the minute the campaign goes live, the minute the switch is flicked, the minute the first dollar is billed, that the campaign should be delivering performance, and how do you overcome some of those expectations typically?
Yeah, absolutely. So I can't emphasize enough, of course, everything you talked about, the customer lifetime value, and really understanding that in marketing. And it really allows you to make those informed decisions kind of based on how long a customer typically buys from you and what they spend over a lifetime of that relationship. And then looking at the different channels that you're bringing in these customers and trying to figure out where are you seeing the most brand awareness. I think a lot of CEOs, for good reason, of course, want to see that lead generation. But of course, first, we need that brand awareness and we need to be dripping consistent messages enough to generate that buzz. So it's definitely one of the biggest questions, kind of how are you going to quantify and keep a pulse on this? And your marketing team needs to understand the metrics that are actionable. I will say there's a lot of kind of misleading, distracting, or convoluted metrics that can exist out there. So one thing that I would recommend, and happy to share any examples of actual weekly and monthly scorecards to be looking at these different channels. And Pronto does a fantastic job of giving us the different analytics that we need and that matter to kind of really drive the next steps and decisions to get that lead generation. So just having a pulse and kind of looking at the right things, I would say is one of the most important, maybe overlooked things. I think a lot of marketers kind of tend to get in the weeds in terms of just trying to execute, get that campaign out, but really having a follow-up plan and making sure that that marketing and sales alignment is there will also help drive this.
Yeah, it's definitely a good point on the sales and marketing. And there's so much knowledge that can be kept in sales conversations or in CRMs, and that data never necessarily gets married to what's going on in marketing, or it's kind of just kept somewhere or left on forms. And so I think marrying that data and getting kind of customer insights as well after someone becomes a customer, having gone through some sort of marketing campaign and the sales cycle, is really key to understand what marketing initiatives are working well and bringing on, your ideal customer profile as well. And so what percentage of revenue can I afford as an MSP? So I think there's a couple of things to consider here. And so as your business scales, are your profit margins increasing? So if you add so many end users, are you therefore getting better deals from some of your vendors? And therefore it makes it cheaper to provide services, or you can make more profit while potentially charging less or charging the same amount. And so again, if you have a new service that you're bringing out, or you start to promote more, is it actually scalable? Or do you actually need new hires to then service that cost, service that new growth? And what kind of fixed costs are attributed to that? Is there risk with outsourcing it to a vendor? Would it be better to hire someone? Do you have the cash flow to hire that person? These are things to think about as well as you're trying to promote solutions or services, as you're planning your campaigns and initiatives, kind of working logistically at how it affects the infrastructure of the company, so that you can actually deliver on the promises you're potentially making to these new customers. And if there is a new fixed cost and you're kind of willing to stomach it because you know it'll actually lead to greater performance with the company, increased knowledge, and obviously higher customer satisfaction, how many customers do you need to acquire to make that fixed cost profitable? And that's going to circle back to the budget and alignment. And so you then go, right, I know I need to get X number of customers and I need to promote this service so I can hire this person at this point. And by month 9 or month 10, I'll be break even. And by month 12 or 18, I'm going to be this much money up in profit. And then the last point I'll make is, are there any tax breaks or MDF funds you could potentially be looking at to help bolster your marketing initiatives? I think MDF funds are rather overlooked from MSPs because they get tied up a lot with fighting fires and the customer acquisition. And once they've actually set these deals with these vendors initially, perhaps they've actually sold a bunch of new products or got to a certain number of user accounts with some of these vendors, and they are now in, say, another tier or a gold partner, premier partner. They usually have different terms, and they can get access to MDF funds that they're potentially not utilizing. So if I was an MSP, I think it's something that you should always be doing, keeping in touch with the vendors that you're selling, say, cybersecurity or cloud or backup for, and, kind of getting to grips with what types of marketing initiatives they'd want to see you implement in your wider scope of what you're doing, and seeing if that can be kind of tied into a channel that would be successful or bring in the ideal customer for you, while also making them happy as well. Do you have any guidance on the types of like portfolios or initiatives that MSPs should take when they're trying to woo over MDF fund providers, Jenna?
Yeah, absolutely. So this is a big part of the marketing engine. It's something that's even grown a lot in the recent years. I would definitely take a look at your A-list vendors, who you're doing the most business with, and get in contact with that rep, and then ask them if you can connect your marketing person with them, because I actually have a regular cadence with a lot of different vendor reps, just to kind of keep a pulse on, how we're doing with sales, what campaigns we're pushing to try to drive some sales. We'll do fun contests, like right now is March Madness. So I actually have a client in the Buffalo, New York area that's running a LinkedIn contest, and we're using MDF to have different incentives to kind of drive those appointments and reviews and purchases and different things. So you can get really creative with MDF. You can do in-person events, you can do webinars, lunch and learns, trade shows, and a lot of digital activities. So everything we're talking about with marketing channels, you can put towards, social media, you can put towards Google Ads, anything in terms of SEO optimization, you can definitely get reimbursed. So it's definitely something to look at, but I would make sure that you have a game plan first to make sure there's someone within your company that can kind of handle that. It's almost a job in itself, to kind of do the full request with a vendor, follow through and execute, and then obviously show the ROI on the back end. So there's a lot of different strategy that goes into it, but I would definitely recommend having that conversation first with your A-list vendors.
Yeah, that's probably another blog piece that we should write, or another webinar for another day that we may have to tackle. So we'll put that on the back burner. And then one of the other points I was going to make is value-driven growth goals. So, good things come to those that who do not wait is the way I would put it. That I think as a business, you kind of have to almost have that incentive to get up and do things and try new things. And so kind of waiting for such success isn't always going to happen. So what are the values you can kind of bring around your company and a company ethos that will ultimately lead, in a perpetual kind of motion way to other types of success? And so, through the form of increased revenue, company pride, employee satisfaction, all these things kind of work hand in hand and will lead to ultimately better success for your business. And so grabbing an environment that's more fun or happy place to work in could be monthly socials, competitions, awards, an annual trip away, healthcare plans, birthdays off was one I remembered that they used to do back at a company I was at in the UK, which people used to like. And obviously platforms to encourage employee feedback. Building a customer success team is a good way to take measures to track customer satisfaction. Gives you an opportunity to upsell to happy clients and rebuild rapport with unhappy clients and potentially increase their lifetime value. So sometimes when it comes to revenue and growth, we always focus on new customers and new acquisitions. And sometimes there might actually be a very good opportunity lying within your database, or an opportunity to turn an unhappy customer into a happy customer, but you just don't have the right kind of team structure or the right tracking or metrics in place to determine where those customers should be in their customer life cycle with you and how to get them on the right track. Creating closer alliances and sharing more with industry peers. This is something that Jenna's got a lot of experience with, and we try to do it as much as we can. Obviously, we're overseas in Thailand, so it does make it a bit more challenging, both in the physical sense and also with the time difference. But I think even webinars and the types of activities, podcasts that we're doing are great. But I think joining and starting peer groups that are, whether you're in your industry or other industries that you're tangential with, where you can provide value, I think are things that are great for building both your comfort in going out and talking about your business and building the brand, as well as finding potentially new customers who you can help and build a rapport with. So do you have any clients of yours, Jenna, that you have that you actually go and help with? I guess I remember you said you were just helping them with their MDFs and events, but do you help them with their peer groups as well?
Yeah, absolutely. So a lot of MSPs are part of some mastermind groups and different things where you come together at least once a month to kind of share best practices and ideas. So always happy to jump in those and help host or facilitate or even share examples. A lot of people in the B2B space are willing to share kind of what's working, what's not. And so that is a big piece of this. And I would say the thought leadership side of it too is really good for a company. Like anything you can do to show the value, provide free resources, really kind of just drive home like that social proof of how you're going to do what you say you're you're going to do. Those kind of meetings, events, and even like thought leadership posts on social media all help with that. So that's definitely something that I can assist with in terms of kind of the overall marketing strategy.
Great. Yeah, I think peer groups is something that's underutilized. More participation. Maybe we'll start one with Pronto one day. And then the last point I was going to make was people obviously get involved in chambers of commerce and potentially local charities. But I think as an MSP, one opportunity could be to offer, say, free cyber awareness training to universities or schools, or even other small businesses. That could be a way to help get your foot in the door and potentially get some, more brand awareness. And that person may not be ready to buy today, but, further down the line, if they're making a decision about their IT partner, they may remember that one time you helped them out and offered a free seminar. Calculating ROI as an MSP, I think, is quite difficult. It tends to be a bit of a chicken and egg situation where the sales cycle can be long. There can be multiple people involved in decision making. If it happens to be something like an industry that's maybe around healthcare or government, there's lots of red tape and other things that you potentially have to kind of get through before you even get into the official shortlist stage and tendering. And then obviously before you do the onboarding, they become a paying customer. So as an MSP, taking a risk with marketing sometimes feels like you're kind of waiting a while to get that money back in the door. But I think the way to always look at any business, any marketing initiative, any investment is, yes, you've got the short-term time horizons and KPIs that I mentioned, but that realistically you're not getting in business to kind of shut shop tomorrow. And that you should be looking at a 12-month, 18-month, 2-year, 3-year, and potentially how long do you actually retain customers for, typically as an MSP. I think Pronto's lifetime value or average customer lifetime is around 4 to 5 years. And I know in the MSP industry, it's quite similar as well. And so that even if with an MSP budget, if you were just doing AdWords, and 3,000, in fairness, is a bit of a random number. Not every client you acquire is going to come in and spend $3,000 in the dot, but this is just a good metric that would kind of give you an understanding of how much value can actually be brought out of an AdWords campaign over that 4-year period. So over the course of the year, if you were spending $3,000 a month for 12 months, which would be a 2,500 ad budget plus Pronto's 500 management fee, that would take you a total of 3K. 3 times 12 is 36. And so by the end of the year, if you'd only acquired 8 customers during that 12 months, you started to accumulate a cumulative MRR of 144K, a campaign profit of 108K. You'd obviously have 36K coming in the door every month from these new customers. And over potentially 4 years, that could work out to over $1 million lifetime value. And maybe you can shave off, say, 100 grand or so if you were going to say have a 10% churn. But ultimately, a small investment or a bit of a leap of faith can ultimately lead to growth that can make you a much more attractive proposition for potential sale, or just help you grow your business at a much better scale in the future. Stick, twist, or fold. And so this is kind of what are the, clues, whether you should be reinvesting in a certain channel, twisting. So should you kind of stick with that channel, but potentially try a different target audience or a different product or solution you're trying to sell through it, or then folding, which is where a campaign may have, hit saturation, or maybe it just never quite worked in the first place. And so having some time horizons and KPIs can also help you determine when is a good time to exit and when not to obviously do it too hastily and not give the campaign the right chance. So a double down is an example of when to go all in on a certain channel. Maybe that you started to record videos. And so to do that was very much a DIY process where you were sat in your office, you prepared a brief script, you looked at some other YouTube videos you'd seen, whether they were MSPs or not, started recording some shots, doing some self-editing, uploading it to, YouTube and LinkedIn and on the website, and then sharing it in your newsletter. And then after doing that so many times, Eventually, one video manages to get some a significant amount of views, 10,000 plus, becomes a recommended video. You get some good feedback from customers. And then the cost of that to you is that it took time and effort, but then the tangible ROI was maybe you closed one deal because a referral lead shared your newsletter to someone who thought it was good, and therefore that person ended up in your sales cycle and became a paying customer. And then the intangible value would be that you improved your public speaking, you got more confident how to learn, build your business brand, and you kind of got more in tune with developing your passion for sales and marketing. And so to double down on that type of example would be that maybe now doing it as a DIY process is not worthy of your time and effort, and that by doing it more professionally, you can actually move up market and get higher caliber clients, get help with the script, have a much higher value production, much more glossy finish, and therefore get potentially customers that may spend 2 to 3 times more than what you would typically bring in for a customer. But to do that, you're going to have to potentially invest in a videographer, a screenwriter, potentially video equipment if you're all going to do it in-house. And then again, what's that fixed cost? What is the acquisition that you would have to attain to make all those new fixed costs worthwhile? And then the last 2 points I'll make would be that the tangible ROI is that you're getting customers that are now worth 3 to 4 times in MRRR. And from the lifetime value, we already know potentially how that could work out for you. And then the intangible value would be that you're getting more traction in terms of your business and brand, and getting invites to do speaking events and so forth at sort of large industry events. Do you have much experience, Jenna, with video marketing and MSPs, or kind of maybe other channels that you've worked with an MSP where you decided to invest more heavily after seeing such early initial success?
Yeah, I will say that video has definitely gotten a lot bigger in recent years. Of course, during the pandemic and everything, home was the new headquarters, and there was a lot of, switch to the digital transformation. And I think a lot of people kind of got on that bandwagon, which is great. And they kind of really had to kind of resurface and redefine their marketing strategy. But I would say now the people that are really kind of, putting themselves out there are doing the videos, the TikToks, there's a lot of new channels that people are leveraging that some kind of just haven't jumped on yet. Even like direct mail, for example, like a lot of people went digital, but now direct mail seems to be something that's catching people's eye. So you have to obviously look at the trends, but at the same time, kind of swim your own lane and stay in your own silo and kind of just be purposeful with your plan. Yeah,
exactly. I also think for your different types of buyer personas that certain channels are going to be better than others. And so, for example, industry events for certain industries are always going to be potentially the best way to do some level of networking. But that for maybe other breakthrough markets, that video and TikTok may be a way to get in front of, a type of business owner that's typically doing a lot of work on that. And then the last slide of the day is getting back to basics. So potentially you've actually gone through some levels of growth, or you've had some marketing initiatives that worked. You may start to hit a bit of a plateau, or you feel like you're getting to, a glass ceiling somewhat. And so potentially there was things that you started out with that made your business successful. And so that could be typically, I think for MSPs, it's often referral programs or reseller programs, partner programs. And so has your referral program become stagnant? Have you got so busy with acquiring new customers and all these new exciting things you've got going on that you don't have many people doing account management with your existing customers, getting those touch points, or kind of creating video content or other content that resonated with those past referrers that they can then share with their other industry peers? And then lastly, how long have you since you refined your attention and account outreach to ensure that your best customers are happy? Because if you are still acquiring new customers, but then you lose new customers due to providing poor service with onboarding all these big customers, you can then have issues in terms of profitability. And you're always with new customers paying to acquire them. It's a lot cheaper to keep people happy than it is to go out and spend new money and take the risk potentially through the tender and then losing deals. And then the last point I'll make is, are you neglecting brand building activities and becoming too reliant on the channel like AdWords or SEO? And then if you happen to slip off page one, or an AdWords campaign wasn't delivering, do you have any other channels that are actually keeping your brand front and center? And I think Jenna made some good points that doing some events and using MDF funding could be a way to branch out your marketing activities that aren't digital, and using kind of MDF funds to help support that. And lastly, how we can help. We offer a free Google Essentials audit for anyone that wants to sign up and take advantage. I'll send a link with the discount code in the email that will be distributed out with the webinar deck. And it gives you an analysis of Google My Business, your presence on organic SEO, so the kind of top page search results for particular keywords. And then lastly, we give you a Google Ads forecast on how many conversions we could expect to deliver for a variety of different ad groups that would be, again, related to the products and services you sell. Any final notes, Jenna, on today's webinar on discussing how to calculate your MSP marketing budget?
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks, Adam. I mean, a lot of great content here. And I know from my personal experience, I can't say enough good things about Pronto and the success that my clients have actually already seen since our partnership together. As a marketing consultant, you can imagine how much goes into finding trusted outsource experts and how great it is when you do. So definitely, to anyone looking to kind of enhance their marketing, no matter what stage you're at, I definitely strongly consider having a concrete marketing plan kind of each year that you can really look back on and see how you performed and kind of what you need to do next to pivot. And there's a lot of different options out there, but kind of having a cohesive engine, multi-channel approach is really going to get you the results that you want to see.
Yeah, and on that point, there'll be a more formal partner page that we'll be creating for Jenna. Jenna's going to be helping some of our clients, particularly with social media campaigns, email campaigns, things that are slightly outside of Pronto's wheelhouse, but we know are all pretty much a really important part of the marketing mix, especially for MSPs. And so there'll be more information to come if you'd like to partner with Jenna on some of those marketing initiatives that Pronto doesn't offer today. So yeah, stay tuned, and thanks for everyone's time today, and look forward to speaking with you all again soon.
Thanks, everyone.